NASA is underfunded, and I'm here today to persuade you into thinking the same. In today's day and age, people are thinking less and less of NASA and what benefits we get from the program. Two reasons for why NASA is underfunded are government cutbacks and lack of interest. And I will also give you reasons on why NASA should be funded. First, government budgeting with NASA. 0.49% of the U.S. federal spending is spent on NASA, while the national defense gets 54% of the budget. The national defense gets $584 billion, while NASA gets only $18 billion. Yes, we need a great national defense, but we go way overboard with the spending, especially since the last war that we had was back in 2003 with the Iraq War. War has been a very large part of America's history, but has died down in the last couple of decades. With that, the military funding needs to be lowered, and the money needs to be more generously dispersed to other programs, such as NASA. NASA's budget was highest in 1966 when the United States was in the height of the space race against the USSR. The United States won the space race by beating the USSR to the moon in 1969, and NASA cannot have made this incredible feat without the additional aid of more government spending. NASA's budget in 1966 was shockingly more than NASA's budget stands today. NASA had a total of around 4.5% of the federal budget spending back in 1966, compared to today's total budget of 0.49%. This difference is absolutely massive. Next, the lack of interest in NASA. The lack of interest could be a direct cause of the funding deficiency that NASA has. The lack of interest in NASA is also not necessarily the government's fault either. Rather, the trends of society have shifted and exploration is no longer one of America's highest priorities. Interest gets gained when exciting things happen or achievements get accomplished, but it is difficult for NASA to make these accomplishments without the proper funding, so it is more like a cycle. If NASA would have better funding by only a small amount more of the U.S. federal budget going into the NASA program, there would be much more interest in the program and more accomplishments would be achieved for the program as well. The Constellation program was canceled by former U.S. President Obama. NASA has been spiraling downhill after President Obama drastically lowered the funding in the Constellation program in 2010, which would have launched multiple shuttles for space exploration and would have been very beneficial for NASA and science in general. The reason for President Obama canceling the program had many factors, but it could be traced down to two major ones. One factor was the politics side of the decision. Joseph Brown from Quora said the newly elected president was from a party in opposition to his predecessor and did not want a national prestige program continuing, which was associated with his political opponents. Another factor is the amount of money that the program would be asking for. NASA needed a budget of $230 billion, which seems like an absurd amount of money, but $230 billion throughout the period of over 20 years is actually pretty reasonable. Considering that the defense budget was granted $700 billion in 2018 alone, and over $14 trillion in the past 20 years, it is acceptable to gift NASA with the amount that they need because it is so small. Reigniting the interest of space exploration. Space exploration is one of the things that the United States is known for, and it is barely even discussed anymore. Whether it is because of the lack of space missions to ignite the excitement in the American people, or it is our society shifting values towards more conservative views and less traditional views of pioneering that the United States is also known for. The last time that talk of space exploration was back in 2014, when talk of the Rosetta mission was still ongoing, and probes were sent out in 2004, and the new transmissions were received. Shelby Masters from redandblack.com also had a very intriguing quote to go along with the article she wrote. Perhaps this mission will remind us why we have endured the financial burden of space exploration in the past. It is all about discovery, the wonder of stretching the limits of human abilities, of trying to realize our dreams, and of reaching and understanding the infinity of space. Finally, what NASA has done to earn the correct amount of funding they deserve. The many inventions of NASA. NASA has played a part in many of the everyday items we use in the world today. Items range from camera phones all the way to CAT scans. According to jpl.nasa.gov, in the 1990s, a team at the Jet Propulsion Lab worked to create cameras small enough to fit on a spacecraft with scientific quality. So without NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab, most phones might not have cameras installed in them. Another huge invention that NASA created back in the 1970s was water filters. The technology that was used to ensure that astronauts have safe and clean water to drink is now used in many municipal water plants and paved the way to devising other ways to filter water that is safe for human consumption. Why we need NASA. Exploration and discoveries is what built the United States into the country that it is today. Although the well-being of the U.S. citizens is at a high level, it will never get any better if we don't take those steps of advancement and attempt to discover new and exciting phenomena. And isn't that what America is all about? As sad as it is, as long as our life here on Earth is comfortable enough, it will be very hard for governments to cut down on important spending and plow it into our space program. If you went through mankind's history and pinpointed the moments of all of the exploration and discoveries that we have made, it's amazing. So why stop here? Why stop something that America is known best for, and why discontinue the search for knowledge and answers? It all has to do with complicated politics and money. Hopefully soon the government can figure out what the problems are and go back to our traditional ways of pioneering exploration. Human curiosity is what drives us and unites us, and the United States is known best for its exploration and attempting to answer humans' most complicated questions. Doing this requires programs like NASA to prosper and be properly funded. Right now this isn't happening. Hopefully I showed you all the reasons on why NASA is underfunded and maybe even changed the way you thought about our government today.